there's no question that we have to sanction Iran for being in violation of UN Security Council resolutions, which China and Russia and the whole world have endorsed. There's no question we need Iran to put restraints on its nuclear program and improve the confidence we will have that it's not going to be turned into a weapons program. And there should be costs to their violations, and I'm sure there will be costs. But I don't think, and I think we were all, well, at least the two of us were in agreement, that any of the sanctions that we're going to come up with are going to change Iran's policy on the nuclear issue. They may have other value, but in terms of getting Iran to suspend their nuclear program, it's pretty clear to me that sanctions are not going to do it. So this is a long way of saying that I think it's unlikely that an American president would choose to bomb. And I think it's particularly unlikely that this American president, having run for president in not a fully, but in an effort to turn around the war machine that he believed that President Bush had initiated, is going to make a decision to attack Iran with military force. And so I think that's unlikely, and therefore the most likely result is learning to live with an Iranian, and here I want to use my words very carefully, with an inherent nuclear capability. If Iran were to test a nuclear weapon or to brandish a nuclear capability, I think many of the calculations that I've just suggested would go away, and the chances of force would increase. But if they were to remain where they are now, in this place where they have an inherent capability, but have not, as best as we can tell, taken that capability to military purposes, we may have to figure out a way to improve our defense capability with Gulf states, to put a so-called umbrella of extended deterrence with our friends and allies in the Gulf region. Because in the end, one of the horrible truths is that Israel's real worry is not so much that they believe Ahmadinejad is going to launch a nuclear attack out of the blue one day with his nuclear bomb, but rather that Israel has had a nuclear monopoly under which its conventional forces have been able to operate with remarkable freedom in the region. And if Iran had a nuclear capability, Israel's monopoly would go away, and they would begin to have to make calculations like everyone else of whether I can just drop a bomb on Syria one day or overfly Lebanon another day or send my Air Force to another Arab country. That's what the Israelis are worried about. So we want to figure out a way to improve Israel and the Gulf states' defense capabilities so that that new factor, this question mark about Iran, doesn't have as great an impact on the military balance in that part of the world. And I think, for final thought, as Karim has said, we're lucky that this unpopular individual is now, 2 years ago we talked about Ahmadinejad running around the world and gathering this kind of anti-American, anti-Western, anti-first world axis. That's gone. His ability to do that is severely weakened. And so what we want to do is keep pushing this regime and closing its ability to operate internationally, making it as unpopular and illegitimate as possible until we hope that political change will occur.
Thank
Long
you.
answer, but it's a tough question.
You covered many areas, and you eliminated some of my questions, so thank you for that. Christian, Jamie said about the risks of attacking Iran, which were many, and one of them was that Iran would retaliate in different ways by supporting terrorist activities and arming militia groups. I am more worried about something that is closer to my heart, and that is, and you've said it yourself so many times, that Iran is the most pro-American nation in the Middle East, or the least anti-American nation in the Middle East, that when in the aftermath of 9/11, Iranians outside of Israel were the only people in the Middle East that actually poured into the streets and held a candle vigil. If Israel or the United States attack Iran, are we going to lose that very same people that want to be our friends? Do you think they're going to coalesce around the regime?
Well, look, I mean, frankly, I do. Because I think anybody, when attacked, becomes nationalistic. And all you have to look back at the Iran-Iraq war, when even Iranians who did not support the Islamic government were hoping that Iran would win and not Iraq. Right. It brought, you know, huge nationalistic feelings out of the people. Right. I think also that, you know, there was this incredible article in The Economist just this week talking to the Israeli fighters who took out Osirak in Iraq in 1981. And it was a completely different kettle of fish. It's a building that was sticking out and they were able to take it out. Right. When they took out the Syrian one, it's a building. I mean, it was unfinished apparently and not much was going on, but they took it out. Iran's system is apparently underground. Right. Its most important system. Right. So even just the ability to do it is questioned. Right. I think, yeah, I mean, look, you know, you never know, but it seems to me that people would not like to be bombed, like they don't want to have sanctions. Right. I mean, I don't find any Iranians in the streets who are saying, oh, yeah, please have the West sanction us because we're going to topple the regime for doing it. It's just going to hurt us. Right. And the leaders of the opposition don't want sanctions either. Right. So I think this is a really difficult thing.
So there will be a rally around the flag.
Not necessarily around the flag, but it's not going to cause them. I mean, with bombing, I think there will be. With bombing, right. But sanctions is simply going to be a net neutral, where the people are just going to get, you know, pissed
Karim,
off.
what do you think on that?
I think Christiane is absolutely right, and Jamie is absolutely right, his critique of the Cooperman article. I had a very interesting experience a few weeks ago next door to Carnegie at Brookings. A friend of mine, Ken Pollack, held a crisis simulation, basically a war game. And there was an American team, an Israeli team, and an Iranian team. And my lot in life, unfortunately, has become to play Ayatollah Khamenei. I was of the Iranian team. And they had very senior former U.S. officials playing, you know, the Secretary of State, and very senior former U.S. officials playing Israeli officials. And the premise of the simulation was that Israel had bombed Iran's nuclear facilities. And it was very useful for me to kind of carry out that exercise in the shoes of an Iranian official, because what happened was that, you know, these nuclear sites are next to population centers. If you look at Isfahan or Natanz and elsewhere, and they're hardened facilities, they're underground, so they're going to take, you know, if you really want to do the job, you have to drop very heavy bombs on them, and there are going to be civilian casualties. And the very first thing I did after this had happened was I sent all the television crew to show
in your role as
in my role as Ayatollah Khamenei. Yeah. So I sent state television there to show all these, you know, mangled bodies of women and children on television. And you can imagine the type of nationalistic reaction that this is going to elicit. And then I put Mousavi, Khatami, and Karoubi, the leaders of the opposition, on television. And of course, they're going to pledge solidarity with the government. I think that's absolutely going to happen. Now, I'm sure you will have a chunk of the younger generation who said that we provoked this, you know, it was our fault. But I think that they're going to be overwhelmed by the majority of people who see these images on the screen, and I think they're going to have, it's going to be awful. You know, I always, when I meet with Israeli officials, I say, listen, the underlying problem you have with Iran, we have with Iran, is the character of this regime more than its nuclear ambitions. If you bomb Iran, by your own accounts, you're going to buy at best, what, 2-3 years in setting back Iran's nuclear program. But you're going to prolong the shelf life of this regime indefinitely. So if you do a simple cost-benefit analysis, from my vantage point, it doesn't make much sense. And especially at a time that the regime is in the throes of a tumult which, you know, they've never experienced before. So I think what you said is right. This is the most pro-American population, or least anti-American population in the Middle East. I think we should be hopeful about what's happening. As Jamie said, it's very unpredictable. It could be still years before this happens, before any transformation takes place. But I think, and I don't say this as a throwaway comment, I say this sincerely, I think that a military attack on Iran would actually be welcomed by Khamenei and Ahmadinejad, because I think it could be the only thing that would really heal internal political rifts and basically kill the opposition movement.
I want to stay on that with you, Karim, because you know, the whole premise of Obama's engagement policy and reaching out to Iran is to talk to this regime, to try to break through. And actually in President Obama's Cairo speech, he said, and I want to quote, that I have come here to end the cycle of discord and mistrust. And yet in your book about Khamenei, you've said that this is a man paralyzed by mistrust. How is engagement going to work? Is it even realistic if you have two polar opposites trying to meet each other halfway, a third of the way?
Yeah. My philosophy in supporting engagement was the following. I said that when President Obama first came to office, I said that we have to basically probe a seemingly facile but fundamental question, and that is, why does Iran behave the way it does? Is Iranian behavior or Iranian policy simply a reaction to hostile, perceivably hostile US policies, or is Iran driven by this immutable revolutionary ideology and it's really incapable of changing? I think during the Bush administration, the conventional wisdom came to be that Iran is only reacting to the hostile policies of the US, the axis of evil, etc. And this didn't apply to only Iran. I think Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, the Syrians, all of them had these pretexts that their bad behavior was simply a response to US policies. And I think Obama has punctured that narrative in a way. We've exposed the leadership in Iran for being the impediment to an improved relationship. And it's very interesting for me in talking to European diplomats who 2 or 3 years ago would complain much more about the United States' unwillingness to engage Iran. And now they've kind of recognized that the problem lies in Tehran, not Washington. Even the Russians have seemingly come around to this. And I think the importance of the engagement approach has been that whereas the Bush administration kind of unintentionally united Iran's competing political factions against the common threat, what the Obama administration has done is basically accentuated these deep internal political divides, both amongst revolutionary elites and between the population and the regime. Now, that was pre-June 12th, and I think that was the right policy. But I think you could make an argument now that this is how I think about it, at least, that we, the United States, have to be on the right side of history. And I think we don't want to look back at this moment 3, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, and say there was an incredibly important moment happening in Iran. And rather than taking it seriously and helping to champion the cause of political reform and political transformation, we focused all of our attention on the nuclear issue, and that moment basically passed us by. So I think, Jamie put this very well. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can make it clear to the people in Iran that we're sympathetic to their cause, that we are on the right side of history. But at the same time, we can have dialogue with this regime the way we had dialogue with the Soviet Union and with Mao's China and these in North Korea and these other countries. I think the word engagement has these connotations which it's almost
Goes
like a wedding
beyond
engagement. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Diplomacy.
Yeah, as if it's something positive.